Welcome back to Between Two Frames. I'm Lieutenant Clark from the Public Affairs Office, and I'm here with Mr. Shannon Kelly, the Environmental Manager here at the 158th Fighter Wing. How are you doing today?
Doing well, thank you.
Good. Can you tell us about what the Environmental Management Office and program is?
Yes, so we support the 158th Fighter Wing under the Vermont Air National Guard with managing all the environmental aspects and impacts across the base. So that includes, when I say 14 different aspects, we've got things that we manage under the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, something called the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act that relates to your hazardous waste, hazardous materials. We have emergency spill plans that we manage. We're a full-stop shop for the environmental office, within the environmental office, for the base. And essentially you could view it, if we impact it environmentally or natural infrastructure, then we manage it, we deal with it, and we address whatever mitigating factors we need in order to make the programs compliant with federal and state laws.
Great. As our mission set changes from the F-16 to the F-35, where does that fall into your role?
Nothing changes, really. We may be managing a few different materials, but my understanding from speaking with other installations as far as hazardous materials that are used for low observable coatings, for example, that's the only thing that would really truly change about managing the environmental programs. Everything remains the same. We don't have to obtain any new permits. It doesn't have a greater impact on air emissions. We expect those actually to diminish or be lowered because some of the things, for example, we have the hush house where engine testing takes place. That goes away once the F-16 goes away. So in reality, many of our environmental impacts are going to be lowered with the F-35 coming online, and that will actually be a welcome part. And we expect for our hazardous waste that we produce to actually be lowered because the program, the F-35 program, tried to be more efficient with its use of hazardous materials and correspondingly the hazardous waste that's produced. So the F-35 was constructed with environmental programs in mind, and that's to have a lower environmental footprint.
Great. Can you tell us a little bit about the process? And we hear the term EIS, which is the Environmental Impact Statement. Can you talk to us a little bit about how that process has been involved in your world?
So the EIS was fully developed and finalized well before my arrival here in 2013. One of the important aspects that came out of that EIS, the conclusion of that EIS, was a mitigation and management plan. And essentially that's our contract with the community for how we're going to manage any of the impacts. Now, the vast majority, with the exception of the way we'll operate concerning noise, operational and administrative controls for noise considerations. What we do is we take that mitigation and management plan, we review that periodically with the wing commander and others. We keep track of processes that are already in place to make sure that our contract with the community is upheld.
And actually, speaking of construction, what are some of the impacts we've seen?
So impacts we manage and mitigate through our federal and state issued permits, which require what we call best management practices, things that control stormwater runoff, which would include erosion prevention and sediment prevention. With that, we've also had some positive impacts in that some of the materials that came out of the rehabilitation of the buildings, you know, your scrap metal, some of your concrete waste, those types of things. We were able to work with the contractor and the community, civil engineering, contracting, to try to repurpose some of those things. You know, you could say recycle as well. And the end result being that we managed to basically reuse, recycle, repurpose many of those materials in such a way that US EPA Region 1 recognized the Vermont Air National Guard with a Federal Green Challenge Award for leadership in sustainability. That's a positive for the unit. That's something that you don't necessarily expect with a big major construction project. Some might argue that these are requirements, you just merely follow the law, but it takes leadership in order to make those things happen at all the levels. Many installations struggle with making those types of things happen, so the EPA recognized the leadership qualities in making that happen, and that was a major reason why we were selected for that particular award in 2018.
Thank you for informing us about the environmental program today.
Thank you for having me.
That's it for today's episode of Between Two Frames. We hope to see you next time.